Om Shri Sai Ram, offering my most humble and loving salutations at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagawan, Sri Satya Sai Baba. Dear brothers and sisters, yet again it's a great privilege to bring to you continued series of his story through the eyes of his boys. In that we started the message from Bhagawan as we have learned at the lotus feet of our beloved Lord. To carry on the discussion further on this Bhukti, let us start with our prayer, and I request you all to join me in this. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness of devotion to Thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for Thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged in one with Thee. O Lord, take my mind and thoughts and let them be in tune with Thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument to work for Thee. Om Shri Sai Ram. Welcome to this episode wherein we are discussing and sharing whatever little we have grasped from Bhagavan on this beautiful topic of Bhukti. But taking the clue from last week discussion, we had paused on a topic of the kind of anger which we know as an emotion, and we have seen in Bhagavan, and how beautifully Bhagavan described the difference of anger between an ordinary person and the man of God or God avatar. And there in Sanskrit, we fortunately have words which differentiate these expressions. So Rudra and Krodha, these are two words which describe what in English we call as anger, but there is a lot of difference. So we'll jump into these topics, but let me have the pleasure of welcoming and introducing my brothers for tonight, who will enlighten us with their learning with Bhagavan. So let me start off with Brother Arvind Yadavalli. Brother Arvind, welcome.
Sai
Sai
Ram.
Ram. Brother Arvind, let me have a quick introduction of yours. Brother Arvind had a pleasure of studying with Bhagavan in our college from 1992 to 2000, and he did his BSc, MSc, then he did his MBA, and then at that time there was a small course called PGDI DCAP, so I would like him to tell about it. And then today he's working in Hyderabad as a healthcare consultant. He handles QA operations and a lot of things in the medical industry. So, Brother Arvind, welcome to this beautiful offering, and thank you
Thank you,
for
Bhai.
making time. So, what
Thank
is
you
this
so much.
PGD cap? Quickly.
Okay, the PGD CAP is a short form, an abbreviation for the Postgraduate Diploma in Indian Culture and Philosophy. It
Wow.
was a brainchild of a former registrar and a former vice chancellor of our university. It was a very interesting course. It was, let us say, a cherry on top of the ice cream of studying the entire secular education, so to speak. And on top of that, you have the spiritual cherry. It was
Yeah.
a
Only.
beautiful,
Yeah.
Sachiva, it was a beautifully composed course of the cultural history of the world, focusing on India as part, or focusing on Bharat as part of the bigger picture of evolution. Then you had the Indian philosophies, you had the various religions, and how religion is different from spirituality. So, world religions, the spread of world religions, and how
Wonderful.
Bharat became the melting pot for all these cultures to come, reside, establish their roots, and also prosper. So
I think
this was a
only
wonderful.
our college can think of these things so beautifully.
Ji bhai.
So Arvind,
Yes.
Brother Arvind, we were discussing about Rudra and Krodha, and
Raudra and Krodha bhai.
Rhoda, yes, and that is what I thought it'll be nice for us to hear it from you. So, why don't you start with that and
Yeah.
let us know how Bhagwan has told you about these things? I'm sure during your drama and play days with Swami. So, please enlighten us on that topic.
Yeah. So the wonderful thing about Bhagwan's message is that you can apply it at the appropriate time anywhere in your life. So when we were talking about bhukti, when we were talking about food and the kind of food we intake with reference to the characteristics and the constituents, and of course the way it is partaken and all that matters in the mind. So when it comes to Raudra and Krodha, well, the setting is different, the context is different. It was a scene, the Rajasuya, no, it was a Vanavasa scene of an alumni drama, a convocation drama that was being put up. Now we are alumni, at that time it was a convocation. I keep getting confused. The convocation drama of the year 1999, wonderful, beautiful opportunity. And I was playing the role of Bhima, or rather given the blessing role of Bhima. And Bhagwan had taken us or invited us along with him to Brindavan for our winter holidays. I'm just setting the context so you get the bigger picture.
Sure.
So all Prashant Nilayam drama boys were in Brindavan, officially Bhagwan's guests. So we were given a room and Swami was treating us like real royalty. It was, I mean, God coming down to the level of, small little bachas like us. And I don't know, amazing. So every day after morning darshan, we were called into Trai Brindavan, and Bhagwan would be seated on the jula, and those wonderful VIP chairs that used to be placed along the border of the jula room. I mean, those of us who've seen the inside of Trai can visualize. Swami would say, "ఆ కుర్చీని తీసుకొని కూర్చోండి." I mean, imagine Swami sitting on the Julha and we sitting on chairs in Swami's presence. And those chairs were like slightly higher than the Julha. So it was so embarrassing, but then Bhagwan is Bhagwan. So he was in the mood. I mean, always in the zone. Okay. Drama practice is perfection for him. Like Swami told once to Brother Ranganath Raju, idoka yajnam, idi oka yagam. So you have to be manasa vacha karmana in it. So in this Vanavasa scene, Bhima was extremely upset with this elder brother Yudhishthira and was shouting at him in the form of a poem. There's a poem called Kondalu Pindi Cheyagala Kurimi Tammulamaina Memu, which means we are five brothers together who can pound mountains. Krishna Paramatmude Pettani Kotaga Nikuyunda. Why are you so worried when Lord Krishna is there like a fort around you? Ranambu Lopala Jayonnati Gurpaka Nenchuchunda. We are the ones who are willing to fight for you in the battle. E Monditanam Badela Agraja. Why are you so stubborn, oh brother? Why do you insist on staying in this forest and why do we have to suffer like this? So I
So
was like,
Bhim,
oh my.
so Bhim
Hmm.
is telling to Yudhishthira.
Gee, Bhima is
Okay,
telling Yudhishthira and he's
Yudhishthira.
in full josh. He's very upset, very disturbed. And I was enacting and putting myself in the zone. And Swami suddenly from you hear that stentorian voice, like, hey, Bhimasena! Pin drop silence. Swami says, hey, Bhimasena! Pop! Everything stops. You come down to reality. You realize you're in the presence of God. And the way Swami was sitting in there, very, very serious. Eyes were, the big eyes. And he said, Nuvu kopam chupinchavaddu, raudram chupinchu.
Wow. Please translate it for everybody.
Don't show anger, show
Sure, Raudrama.
wrath. Rudra is wrath. So I did not know the difference. I dropped on my knees and I said, Swami, rentiki vyatyasamemi, Swami. Swami, what is the difference between the two, Swami? Please, what is the difference between the two? And Swami, my God, I just can't forget that visualization. Swami was sitting in the Julha. He leans back. He puts one.
Oh no. The Raudra was too high and our brother froze. So,
Okay, back again.
oh, sorry.
So
Thank you.
Swami put his left hand on the
Oh,
bolster towards his left side. The right foot was on top of the footstool. And with his right hand, like one Shat Chakravarti giving a command, he says, Satyamunu, Asatyamu, Dharmamunu, Adharmamu, Atikraminchinapudu. నీ హృదయములో ఆవిర్భవించు భావము రౌద్రము. When truth is overpowered by untruth and dharma is overpowered by adharma, the feeling that arises in your heart is raudra. That is a more fundamental feeling for the well-being of humanity. That is raudra.
Okay, slow down. Repeat again for the benefit of everybody. Yes.
Right. Satyamunu asatyam. Okay, not the Telugu part, the English part. When truth is overcome by untruth and dharma is overpowered by adharma, the feeling that arises in your heart is raudra.
Wow.
So, satyam is all encompassing. Trikalabhadyam satyam. Dharmam is not limited to an individual. Dharma is meant for everyone to follow. It, of course, you have Vyakti Dharma, Achara Dharma, Udyoga Dharma, and all that. Let's not get into Madhharma Shastra over here. But with reference to Bhagavan, Dharma Raja at that point in time was Dharma Raja for the entire Bharatavarsha. He was not Dharma Raja only as an individual. So he was Lord Mahavishnu, Lord Sri Krishna was advising Bhima as Satyasai to this little boy called Arvind that Satya and Dharma are the eternal principles for which the emotion that arises in your heart is Raudra. Alright, he didn't leave it at that. The second half is very important. నీ అహంకారానికి దెబ్బ తగిలినప్పుడు కలుగు నీ మనస్సులో కలుగు భావము కోపము. The feeling that arises in your mind when your ego is hurt is anger.
I think that is more relatable for all of us. Huh?
That is the punchline. How beautifully Swami cleanly demarcated between what arises from ego.
Repeat the second line also, please. Yeah.
Right. The second line says, the feeling that arises in your mind, manassu, Swami was specific. The feeling that arises in your mind when your ego, ahankaram, when your ego is hurt, నీ అహంకారానికి దెబ్బ తగిలినప్పుడు కలుగు నీ మనస్సులో కలుగు భావము కోపము. And the way he said kopamu was kopamu. You know, Swami is the ultimate Nataraja, the Natya Shastra master. When he said Raudramu, he said Raudra. And when he said Kopamu, Kopamu. It's cheap. Kopamu. Raudramu. It is fundamental. So when the Lord teaches, if you are willing to receive, it was a wonderful experience. So relating it to Bhukti, as is the food, so is the mind, as is the mind, so is the behavior. So the quality of food, the type of food, the quantity of food, how we eat, what we eat, all these things matter. So in that context, Kopa and Raudra will definitely play a role.
Beautiful. Let's continue with this beautiful journey. And for that, let me welcome my other brothers also. And that would be interesting to have them and join us this discussion. So let me call upon Brother Sudhindran. Brother Sudhindran, Sairam and welcome.
Sairam, brothers. Sairam.
Even though everybody knows you very well, but still a quick introduction. Brother Sudhindran had a great blessing of staying at Parthi at Bhagwan's lotus feet, I should say, from 1997 to 2011, where he did his graduation, post-graduation, and then MBA, and went on to work in the Central Trust from up to 2011. And presently he's in Bangalore. So, Brother Sudhindran, thank you very much for joining us again on this discussion. Sairam. And next, I would like to invite Brother Raju. Sriranganath, Raju, Sairam.
Sairam, brother. Sairam, brother. Sairam.
Welcome. Brother Raju also is known to all. He was in institution from 1998 to 2007. He did his 11th to his MBA, and presently he's a director at Sanatan Analytics. Thank you, Brother Raju, and thank you for joining us again.
Sairam, brother.
And last but not the least, we have Brother Jagdish Chandra.
Sairam.
Sairam Jagdish, he's joining us from Germany right now. He was also student from 2000 to 2010. He did his graduation and post-graduation and PhD from our campus in Prashantinilayam. So, Brother Jagdish, welcome. So thank you all for joining us today again, and we continue with the journey. Brother Arvind gave us a start on the topic Bhukti, which we are discussing. And last time we had really explored the Bhukti's definition and concept, and then we had gone into koshas. But just to define the concept of Bhukti, may I ask Sudhendran, brother, why don't you give us a start of giving us again a kind of an definition, if I may say, of how do we look at Bhukti and how should we perceive it to move forward?
Right. Thank you, brother. So we have in the last session we have talked about what bhukti is in quite a detailed manner, and so to summarize, bhukti would mean any form of enjoyment through the senses. So well, that is the functional aspect of bhukti, but fundamentally, okay, let me put it across through an analogy. So typically, we've seen how for example, take a dog. It keeps chewing on the bone, and even if you take a camel, it takes delight in eating thorny leaves. So it is quite puzzling as to how this is giving so much of taste to a dog and a camel. So the point is, it was explained that when the dog keeps chewing at the bone and when the camel keeps eating those thorny leaves, because of that, there's a bleeding that happens in the mouth. And the taste of its own blood, that's what actually attracts the dog and the camel. They don't realize that it's their own blood that is inducing that taste, and that taste doesn't come from the bone or from the thorny leaves. So Bhagawan used this analogy to explain how whatever form of joy that we may get out of the senses, it is actually not, because it is not derived from the senses as such. It is a reflection of the inner joy, the very core of our being. And therefore, any form of joy, it is only a fractional reflection of the supreme bliss that exists within us in the form of the divinity. So therefore, all this bhukti, the entire concept of bhukti is nothing but it is a reflection of the pure ananda that God is. So any form of enjoyment, bhukti, that we experience, we should remember in the back of our mind, this ultimately it is the reflection of the inner bliss of divinity that is within us, that is resurfacing through these sense gratification. So this is, and this is not just for food, but any form of enjoyment that we take in through the senses. So that's why Swami says that why do you go after these small things, these small, petty, fleeting, and fractional aspects of the joy, when you actually have the entire source, the spring of Ananda within you, which is complete and whole. So that's the logic of why we should aim for the spiritual Ananda vis-a-vis just the small fleeting joys that we get out of the senses. Saira.
Awesome.
See, when we look at it, Anand, we talk about, as in the initial also we discussed about the Anand Pipasi kind of concept, that everything what we do in life is to chase that happiness. And how beautifully it is explained through the 5 koshas that we had introduced, that Anandamaya kosha is the final sheath, which actually is the core guarding us. And that is a reflection which goes into the other sheaths, if I may say so. So exploring that, whether we like it or not, we have to go through the journey of Annamaya kosha, then move to the Pranamaya and all that. So let us jump into the first kosha and see that journey towards happiness, how it starts from Annamaya kosh. And that kosh, to understand it, is itself, in a way, joyous journey, because it gives us some kind of a joy, but that joy itself is too much for many human beings to handle. So imagine going up to the Paramatmic joy is very different, you know. So let us explore this. So let me open the floor for you and look at the formation of the body. What does our scriptures tell? And Bhagwan has also spoken about the formation part of it. So anybody, Raju, any idea on that?
Yes, brother. In fact, in one of the sessions that Swami was talking to us, uh, he spoke about how the entire light force comes into a being, into a body. So, in that, I distinctly remember Swami speaking that the basis of the body, that is Anamaya Kosha, takes root in the womb of a mother. And on another occasion, he explains that you have a sword or you have a precious germ. Where do you keep the germ or a sword? You have to keep it in a sheath, in something that safeguards the sword or the germ. He says, in the same manner, the most precious in this entire universe is Atma, is Atman. That God has covered it with five, not one, not two, but five sheets. And beyond those five is that most precious thing. And he went on to explain that the starting is the Annamaya Kosha. And Swami beautifully gives a definition as to what constitutes Annamaya Kosha. He says it is the flesh, the bones, and the fluids in the body. These three constitute Annamaya Kosha. And he goes on to explain on one more occasion. I mean, such a beautiful, as Brother Arvind was sharing in the initial introduction as to what a great actor and what a great orator Swami is. Swami draws a beautiful parallel between human body and the Veena of Saraswati. Now, I would request if someone can join me, probably if I can just request Jagdish to just volunteer for this small exercise. In fact, this was done in Swami's presence by some seniors, and I got to learn about this from one of our brothers. So, Jagdish, just help
Sure.
me out. Repeat this word. All of us know that Saraswati, goddess Saraswati, sits on a swan, Hamsa, right? And so, can you just repeat this word, Hamsa, Hamsa? So, Hamsa, in
Hums,
other words, it is Hamso. It is. So, just keep repeating Hamso, 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 Hamso.
Hamso, 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 Ham.
So, what do we hear? We
So
would not. Yes, we don't hear Hamsa. We hear it becomes Soham. So that's why Saraswati is supposed to be sitting on a swan, a white swan. Hamsa, or rather Soham. Now, what is Saraswati? Saraswati represents the life force or the knowledge. So that is the breath, the prana.
Pranamaya
Goes
Kosha.
up, prana goes up and down, up and down, up and down.
Hmm.
And what does she hold in her hand? She holds Veena. And how many frets does a veena have? The veena of Saraswati. It is not Rudra veena. The veena of Saraswati has 24 frets. In a similar fashion, human vertebrae. There are 24 vertebrae in a human spinal cord. So that is represented as Saraswati veena. And those two ends of the veena that we see, one is a huge, massive one. One is a small one. But both are essential for the balance of the veena. The small one, Swami compares it to Mooladhara Kosha, and the large one is a Sahasrara Chakra. So Mooladhara Chakra and Sahasrara Chakra. And Mooladhara Chakra is Annamaya Kosha. He says when you activate, and how does a veena, how do you play a veena? How does a veena emit its sound? When fingers move from one fret to other fret, the sound emerges. And what plays veena? The Saraswati, the mother Saraswati, goddess Saraswati. In the same way, the breath, prana, moves when it moves from one fret to other fret, that is from one vertebrae to other vertebrae, each chakra gets activated. So when it is in the base, the Mooladhara chakra gets activated. That is where Annamaya Kosha finds its fulfillment. The pleasures of the body, pleasures of the flesh. It means the entire spectrum that the enjoyments of the flesh can have. Now, as that prana moves from Mooladhara as it goes up, Swadhisthana, goes up and up, till it comes to Agni Chakra. This Saraswati is actually playing Veena. You're using breath, the
I like the
prana.
analogy. Yeah? It is so
This is
romantic, so
this is
poetic. It
Swami's.
is.
Is absolutely. I'm such a great orator, Swami's. Entire philosophy of Indian chakras. He beautifully describes it so in such depictively that
So
you will not
poetic.
be able to forget it even if you want. So this is about Anamaya Kosha in short.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Anybody,
Really.
Jagdish, Surindran, you want to join in and share something? It's fantastic. I think you gave a very good start there.
Absolutely. I'll just, but probably I'll take this, swing the pendulum a little bit to the other side. We're just beginning a journey on the Annamaya Kosha. But the reason, and the source for that is basically what Raju just now said is that knowledge, Goddess Saraswati, or the life force that actually tells how to channelize our various organs. And that life force, Swami has quoted innumerable on innumerable instances, that famous Tyagaraja Kirtana, Chimalo, Brahmalo, Shivakeshavadulalo, that same life force runs across, let it be an ant, or let it be the Brahman himself, or Brahma himself, not the Brahman, Brahma himself. And why I'm quoting this analogy is basically because of the destructive path of consumerism that we have embarked upon. It's literally, there is no end to consumption, let it be anything, and definitely food. Anamaya Kosha means there is no end to satiating that aspect of our lives. And Swami gave a very interesting analogy. He said, when your dog becomes sick, what does it do? And Swami started telling, it stops eating. The first thing it does is it does not eat. You put the most, the thing which it likes most in front of it, it wouldn't. But the moment you open the door, what it does is it runs into a garden, digs up certain specific tubers. It doesn't eat grass in general. It digs up something specific and it eats. And then Swami asked us, did the dog ever do an MBBS? Or did it study medicine? How does it know what exactly to dig up, what exactly to eat, which is the cure for the malady it is suffering, especially of the stomach? And then Swami said that particular presence is there in each one of us. Just that our, you know, unsatiable hunger for food is so dominating that this voice is more often than not subdued. And we have the solution. It's very simple. Upavasa, probably we will discuss a little later in the discussion. And all those remedies are with us, but we are not able to listen to that voice of the inner force. And to give a modern analogy to that is basically the
If I
cell
may,
phone.
JC, just one
Sure,
sentence. It is
sure.
said in Telugu,
Mhm.
Lankanam Paramaushadam,
Paramount.
which translates to fasting is the best medicine. Anyway, continue. I just wanted to share that because I just remembered that. Thank you.
Absolutely, brother Arvind. That is a very famous saying in Telugu, that you have to be abstain from food, and basically
Abstain.
it is basically that it has a lot more deeper meaning. Food is not just the food, physical food, but a lot more things. But the modern analogy is that of a cell phone. You have a cell phone, you want to charge it. How much charge does it require? It has a limited capacity. You need to charge so that it survives the next day. That's it. There is no point in fighting a battle for the color of the charger. It does not matter. All that it needs is a few electrons to charge its battery. And that's how Swami would live his life. Means not only about talking, but also about what he said, what he did. Of course, that will be discussed. I'm sure somebody will bring it up in when we discuss along. But that's the little I wanted to add as far as how Annamaya Kosha should be treated. It is not live to eat, but eat to live. There's a difference between both of them, and Swami very beautifully taught us that.
In our MBA, when the MBA program started, and all of you know that Bhagawan used to come to the college and teach the course. In fact, I'm using this word consciously because he did teach every day, every Sunday. He would take 2 hours or more and then take subject by subject. In that, he had actually once talked about the body. And very interestingly, he said, what is this body made up of? And he gave us a very beautiful chart. He said, iron equal to 2 inches, lead equal to 6 pencils. In those days you have to have Nataraj pencils. So he pointed out and said 6 Nataraj pencils. So lead equal to 6 Nataraj pencils. Then soap equal to 5 bars. So 5 bathing bars, if you take 5 bars, that is soap. Then lime water equal to 1 bucket. Phosphorus equal to 900 matchsticks. So you have the phosphorus on tip of the matchstick. So you just collect 900 of them, and that much phosphorus, and a little bit, conchum sulfur. He would say just like that, little bit of sulfur. So he says that is what the human body is made up of. And we started, it was the way he explained, it was so humorous. We were also kind of laughing, and Swami said, even if you make the body, I'll give you double of this quantity, make it. Can you make? So we were just smiling, and Bhagawan said, even if you make it, how will you put life?
Wow.
The life is in my hands. When he just switches that statement, he suddenly, that you can see the divinity right there in front of you, because the way he switches his mood is, how will you put life inside? That is in my control. So that was the
Amazing.
beauty, the way he explained the human body and gave the relevance of his own, that Brahman, what is the power there? So
And to give a
imagine,
clinical to give a
yes,
clinical
yes.
angle to this, I was just thinking when you said man can create the entire body, the thought that came into my mind was Frankenstein. You create the entire body, and we do genetics and we do all that kind of fancy stuff. But then, if you look at the natural course of things, life in itself is a miracle. You ask any gynecologist or any doctor, they say out of millions and millions of, how shall I say, the male component, only one germinates with the female component. It's a million to one chance.
So,
So that happening in itself is a miracle. And then in a textbook of physiology, which I read when I was in Delhi, when I was sent to Delhi by Swami for training, studied in All India Institute under Venugopal sir. That is when you open the textbook, like not physiology, pathology, textbook of pathology, there are two lines. The first one says, to be normal is a miracle. And at the bottom, the bug always wins. There are two lines. There's a beautiful logo of the publisher in the center. There's a line on top which says, to be normal is a miracle. And at the bottom, the bug always wins. So when we
excellent.
talk about God, creation, food, life, formation of life, the gift of this body in itself, to be normal, to be born as a normal human being in itself is a miracle. And therefore, I just want to add this thought here. It is our duty, it's not an option, to maintain this temple in which the God is
Sure.
indweller. It's a
And
duty.
for maintaining, we have to talk about the food part of it.
Oh,
What sustains
yes.
this? What sustains this
Absolutely.
body? So
Yes.
maybe I'll ask Brother Sudhindran, give us some Vedic context and a definition of what is food, what we call anna. So that will be maybe a good exposure for everybody to understand how to look at food itself.
Right, brother. So in the Taittiriya Upanishad, in the Brahmandavalli, in the very first stanza, it talks about the as to how the creation happened. And see, when we link, ultimately when we say everything is linked to God, so this that logic is very clearly explained here in this mantra. So it starts off with तस्माद्वा एतस्मात् आत्मन आकाशः सम्भूतः आकाशाद्वायुः वायोरग्निः अग्नेरापः अद्भ्यः पृथिवी पृथिव्या ओषधयः ओषधीभ्योऽन्नम् अन्नात् पुरुषः. So it starts off with, from the Atman, God emerged the Akasha, and from Akasha emerged Vayu or wind. Vayor Agnihi. From Vayu emerged Agni, fire. Agner Apaha. From fire emerged water. Abhyaf Prithvi. From water came the element of earth. Prithivya Oshadhayaha. From earth emerged plant and vegetation. Oshadhibhyo Nam. From these plants and vegetations emerged food. Annat Purushaha. And from food emerged man. So when Brother Raju was saying how the Anamaya Kosha is formed in the womb of the mother, it is all composed of the food that the mother has ingested, and uh, from that genetic matter, this body actually is created. And but for the entire creation, it's dropped down from the supreme source, which is the Atman or Brahman. So that's how everything we very clearly say it flows down right from God unto human, and actually we are at the right at the end of this funnel from Brahman, and then Annat Purusha. At the end of it is Purusha or mankind. So this is the
How do you define Anna?
Annam. So Annam, see, one very fascinating aspect of Sanskrit is that every word has 6 layers of meaning. I say layers of meaning because it can be interpreted in so many ways. The great scholar Shayanacharya has himself mentioned that every word has 6 valid references or layers of meaning. And one of those meanings for the term Anna is Anna. Food. Anna is the one which consumes its consumers. So Anna is actually it. We think that we consume food, but fundamentally, it's the food that ultimately consumes us. So this
So,
can be showed in
so
two
food
ways.
is so the food is that which consumes the consumer.
Absolutely. It's very interesting, isn't it? It's kind of a paradox. It's a paradox. I mean, very, at a very common sense level, this body that we talk of, that is made of all the Panchabhutas, which form the basis of Annamaya Kosha, is born from this Anna, and at the end of it, when we die, it goes back into the very same Anna. So when throughout the life we keep eating food, but at the end of life, the Anna eats us. The
Circle of
Panchabhutas,
life.
it consumes us. It's the circle of life.
It's very
Yeah.
interesting because they explain it very nicely that food is that which should allow you to grow. It should not modify you. So if I
Right.
eat something and I can digest it, that gives me energy. But if I eat something that will change my character, my personality, my aura, then the food is consuming me. And in a
Absolutely.
way, everything changes because whatever we eat, we get impacted. So this definition is such a subtle definition, which really is like a far-sighted and beautifully defined the whole concept. But how we understand is this level. So if you eat, say, uh, red meat, you will tend to become that because there is a lot of frequency vibrations in that. So it is, it's a very beautiful definition that way. So
In fact,
Raju,
You are
brother,
what you eat.
just
I'm keeping
yes.
the floor open now. Please jump in now.
So, in
Yes.
fact, in one of the discourses Swami talks about, I was just reading this morning. Swami talks about Ravana. Ravana at 2 stages. The Ravana who prayed for Lord Shiva to come down of Kailasa mountain. The Ravana who went and warned Sita that he should marry him, she should marry him within 2 months. Swami says the primary difference between these two Ravanas was that Ravana who was praying for Lord Shiva, he was eating Kanda Mula. He was eating roots and food that is available from the natural vegetation. But this Ravana, who went and threatened Sita, who abducted Sita, who got carried away by the complaints of his sister Shurpanaka. This Ravana was lost in wine and flesh. That made the difference to his mind and his thoughts, and hence the entire destiny of Lanka was written with that one single habit. This is and another in another context, brother Sudhindra beautifully mentions about Sanskrit having so many layers of meaning, and in one of the contexts I just glanced upon this beautiful mention of Swami. We know that we're talking right now Bhukti, and we know Bhakti and Mukti. Last time we just spoke about how Bhukti to Bhakti, there are layers that paths that Swami has explained. Now, in one of the contexts, Swami explains that Bhakti, Bhakti, Mukti. So in Bhukti, in Bhukti, so there are three things are common. One is common is T. T is common in Bhukti, Bhakti, Mukti. If you take away T, in Bhukti, in Bhakti, A. So Bha plus A. Bha is light, A is to that, meaning of Sanskrit. So light, or basically attraction to that supreme light, is Bhakti. Attraction to the existence of the light is Bhukti, basically food. And Mukti, there is no attraction. You are going away from the Ti is Mukti. So where I am coming to is the U from Bhukti, U from Bhu, and A from Bhakti, and Mu of Mukti, A, U, Ma. This is Omkara. Swami says the Omkara is nothing but this combination of Bhakti, Bhukti, and Mukti. Without Bhakti or without Bhukti or without Mukti, Omkara is not complete. And that Omkara, he says that form of sound, that Shabda Brahma, is this human being. And because why I'm saying this is Swami gives such emphasis even to this aspect of bhukti or the food. In one more context, he says, Rojuku Okamaru, it's a Telugu quote in which he says, Dinamuku Okamaru Tintiva Digulu Ledu. భోజనము రెండు మార్లైన భోగి నీవు మూడు పూటల తిండితో ముప్పు కలుగు తెలుసుకొని నీవు మసులుకో తెలివితోడ. The meaning is దినముకు ఒక మారు తింటివా దిగులు లేదు. If you eat one time in a day, do not worry, you are a yogi. If you eat twice, భోజనము రెండు మార్లు అయిన భోగి నీవు. If you eat 2 times in a day, you are a bhogi. మూడు పూటల తిండితో ముప్పు కలుగు. You will have problems if you eat 3 times. Swami says you are a rogi if you eat 3 times in a day. తెలుసుకొని నీవు మసులుకో తెలివితోడ. And hence behave carefully and accordingly. So he also gave the guidelines of the food and the importance of the food. We just need to kind of decipher the context and the meaning.
Raju, you are really creating problem for many people.
No, in fact,
eat once you are yogi, eat twice you are rogi, eat thrice you are a bhogi.
No, eat twice bhogi, eat thrice rogi.
The point is, if you apply it according to the context, as Raju clearly pointed out, that is called Desha Kala Paristiti, and also Kala Karana Kartavya. As Bhagavan says, you need both Yukti as well as Bhakti. You need a combination of both to apply. That's why if you look at our Indian philosophy, if you look at Bharatiya culture, there is a time and place for everything. It also says breakfast, lunch, and dinner is important, but when? It goes back to our brahmacharya. At that time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner are important because the body is growing. Once you reach a particular stage of your life, when your own metabolism begins to tell you to slow down, then you come down from 3 times to 2 times. And finally, when you reach, I don't want to get into the discussions of varnas and ashramas and how the progressions are there. That we were taught as part of our PG diploma course. So this thread hit that, as you said, he was talking about a veena. So he plucked that string and that note popped up. So I'm just sharing that thought here. Desa Kala Paristiti, Kala Karana Kartavya.
Right, because those things are relevant. But I'll tell
and
you
that's why the last line of Swami.
Yeah.
Sorry, bhai. The last lines. Raju, can you please repeat that last line of Bhagawan, of that poem?
తెలుసుకొని నీవు మసులుకో తెలివితోడ.
తెలుసుకొని మసులుకో తెలివితోడ. So use your intelligence, learn, and move according to that. That's the beauty of Bhagavan. Thank you,
Yes.
Swami. Yes, brother. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I remembered one, about the food process, especially in the South India. There is a kind of a process in eating also. Like when you have a meal, you start off with dry little rice and with the ghee or something, and then you go with vegetable, then you go with rasam, then you go with sambar, and then you close it with curd. So there is a kind of a full process of eating food, and it has its own science to it. And we as a North Indians, we get to learn in Parthi these things, but it is not taught in that manner. It is okay, but when Swami comes, you have the 16-course meal as a prasadam. So obviously we have the pleasure of eating all the variety. So, and I'm just recalling when Bhagwan would finish food fast and then he would start walking around the hall. At that time, the class which was supposed to serve, and especially the younger, who are young and who are new to the system, they want to be in front of Swami for serving. And you never know how much time Bhagavan would spend walking around. He could just say bye and then walk out or go somewhere. So the poor fellows, everybody had to wait inside the dining hall, the kitchen side, with the buckets in hand. So I think the vegetable had gone, chapatis had gone, everything was gone. Now a person with the rasam was waiting. Actually, sambar, yeah, he was having sambar and waiting. In hurry, he went and picked up the sambar bucket and he was waiting. And they told him sambar is not yet, because still that rasam has to go, then sambar at the end. So the poor fellow got so nervous, and the boy did not know, if Swami is going or not going. In that excitement, he took the sambar bucket and he went in the hall. And in front of Swami, he served. Bhagavan was standing, he didn't even look at him, but he wanted to show Swami's face of his, and he served sambar. And then he ran away because he knew that if he is spotted, then teacher can tell him, why are you here? Your turn has not come. And as he must have, I don't know where he went, who was that boy, Bhagavan was walking around and suddenly he looked at the plate of that boy and said, hey, sambar? How did he get sambar? Because Swami said, rasam is going on right now, so why did you eat sambar? So Swami was so particular about it that how could he eat sambar before rasam? And the boy is saying, Swami, it's okay. And Swami is saying, no, it's not good. You have to eat first rasam. Who gave sambar to him? And everybody in the hall got frozen at that moment. All the bucket serving boys, everybody froze, looking at Swami. Swami said, who has sambar? And there was no sambar boy in the hall. So they were looking for sambar boy. And Swami went to say, hey, what do you have? He said, Swami, I have rasam. Then how did he get the sambar? It became such a situation in the dining hall that sambar boy disappeared. But Swami said, how can he disappear? Sambar is here on the stage, chair, in his plate. That means somebody has served him sambar. Who is that? And that went on for 5 minutes. And the poor boy was saying, Swami, I'm fine. I will eat this. But Swami said, but now who did serve that? You have got spoiled. Now you didn't eat rasam. How will you eat rasam? So ultimately a new plate was brought for him.
Wow.
Wow.
So you can imagine how the whole mood went. And I was recalling it because, when you look at the type of food and the process of food, how important, I don't know, it can be you can take it as a playful activity of Bhagavan just to play with us. But I feel there is also a lesson in eating, in the process of food. What is your thought?
I'll jump in here a bit, Brother
Jagdish.
Abhimanyu. One thing is, Swami, there is an etiquette. We call it the word, the proper Sanskrit, Telugu and Hindi word is maryada. You have to have that etiquette well, sir. And Swami was so particular. I remember during our Kodai session at one point, Swami would come in and only the serving boys were arranging the plates for the guests to come in and the others to come in. And Swami would be keenly observing. So one day I was holding the water jug and walking and I hear an hey. And I turned back and Swami would say this. That's all. No words spoken. What he means is, why are you stooping? walk straight and while serving water. So even something as minute as that was extremely means taken note of. He wanted the feeling, and the feeling is definitely has to come at some stage, but at least at physical level, what etiquette? How are you serving? Are you serving everything from left to right in the proper order? Just as you mentioned, there is also an order in the plate. You simply cannot serve anything anywhere. There is a clockwise and an anti-clockwise rule there too. And Swami was extremely particular about that. And just to add to your mention of the sambar, my first year, I just joined in Vrindavan. That year was the year of the summer course 2000. The first day when Swami stepped into the dining hall, all the freshers were asked to sit, and I was sitting too. As a lucky draw would have it, or immense grace of Swami walked straight up to me, as if he made a beeline, looked at my plate and said, "Itna pickle khayega?" Until then, I had not even looked at my plate. Believe me, because the euphoria was such that Swami is coming. Everyone is
So
looking towards
Bhagwan
me.
said to you
Where
that,
Swami is
will
coming?
you eat so much of pickle?
So much of pickle. And that
Wow.
was the time when I glanced at my plate. What happened was somebody must have served pickle with the curry ladle. Swami made
Oh
a
God.
beeline to that particular counter where I was served and said, "Where is the ladle?" He got it changed. He said, "Somebody served a lot of pickle to that poor fellow." And that's
Amazing.
the level of detail Swami goes in. I just wanted to share it at this point. So that etiquette, that
Awesome.
maryada, it's very important.
In fact, one
Totally.
of our senior brothers in his in the first early summer courses of 70s, he had told me this incident. He was given the job of serving salt. So he was, those were the days when the boys had come from different backgrounds. They're not those summer courses were open for all the devotees and non-devotees too.
Hmm.
So this particular brother of ours was a student, and he was serving salt with that small. You have the small steel spoons for salt serving. So with
Right.
that he was serving, and 2 3 servings later, he had a tap on his shoulder. He thought it must be some of those serving boys who was disturbing him. He said, "Don't disturb. Swami must be watching." So he was telling in Telugu,
Hmm.
"Kottakra, Swami చూస్తుంటారు." And but the tap continued. Then it turns back to Swami standing, and Swami was quite upset with him. And this boy said, "Swami, what did I do wrong?" He said, "How are you serving the salt?"
Hmm.
He said, "You are student. So many people are looking at you. How are you serving the salt?" He said, "Swami, I take that spoon, do it 1 2 3." He said, "No. When you serve salt, it has to be only once."
Wow.
And why is it not 3 times? He did not know. But on another occasion, one more boy was serving rice. He comes from North Indian background. So when you take the ladle and serve, you serve it from right to left. You hold the ladle, and right to left it goes in. This boy, being a background of a non-Indian background, let me put it that way. So he was not used to serving, and this boy picks up the ladle, and when this particular brother of ours comes to the front, he serves him from left to right. And Swami is watching it. Swami got up and
Boom.
said, "Stop it. Ape." So there it was not expected reaction of Swami. It was just a serving. He just put the rice there, and Swami gets up and says, "Stop it." And nobody understood what went wrong. I mean, amount of rice was right, and the ladle was everything was proper. Some comes to me and says, "When you serve from right to left, that is giving annam. But when you serve from left to right, that is shraddham. That is
Oh,
gratitude to your
Yes.
deceased." And
Exactly.
in the same way, when you put that salt 2 times or 3 times, that is gratitude to your deceased. So Swami is so particular. I mean, he need not specify as to how many times you should serve, because there are thousands of students, and he did not bother about that particular boy. There were 12 counters, as he tells me, but he was very particular that it should be served in particular manner, in the particular style. And in another sense, that is the respect that Swami gave to our traditions and customs, because they were very scientific.
But there is one thing I want to add here,
wow,
because
wow.
this once in one of the Purnachandra sessions, which Parthi boys were fortunate to enjoy during their winter holidays, this concept Swami very beautifully explained with an example from Sri Adi Shankaracharya's life. Apparently, Adi Shankaracharya, along with his disciples, would go for Bhikshatana. So, in a particular Shaukaru, as Swami called, a merchant's house, the man was not very much in favor of bhikshus. So he was having his Panchabhaksha Parvana, as we call it, the 5 course meal. He was enjoying everything. And then Bhavati Bhikshahin Dehi, they come on to the near the doorway. And then this master of the house, he curses left, right, and center. These people have no other work to do, simply come and all that stuff. But the lady of the house, she has a soft heart. She knows the more you give, the more you get. Probably the man forgot, but the wife remembered. So she after serving her husband, Bhavati Bhiksha continues. One of the disciples are there, but that turns out to be Lord Adi Shankara himself. Adi Shankaracharya himself is standing there. This lady goes with the food. She looks at him and she wants to offer the food. As Raju said, it has to go from right to left. But she looks into Adi Shankaracharya's eyes and she puts it left to right. And Adi Shankaracharya looks at her and smiles and says, Amma, thank you. You have respect for tradition. You have respect for the true vibrations of food. In that action, see the subtlety of communication. That's why they say during the ancient times, our mothers and our forefathers, grandmothers, they had so much of gyan. The husband had spoken very negatively about the food, so the negative vibrations would have got into the food, and that food she has to go and serve because it is her dharma to serve. But if she serves food with negative vibration to a brahmana, it is a sin. So she has to serve. So she serves, but she serves it in the apatra, not the prapatra methodology.
Wow.
So Lord Adi Shankara is so wise, he understands that the Griha Lakshmi is fulfilling her dharma, and as a bhikshu, he is receiving it as his dharma, but the Griha Lakshmi is also communicating, please don't eat it because it does not have the right vibration.
Wow.
Swami explained that. So I can go so many when it comes to the quality,
Wow.
quantity, patra, patartha, paka, Swami is phenomenal in that. Now, I think Jesse, you can throw some gyan about the food aspect, the different components of it. I'm sure Swami would have spoken about that. Like the 5 types of food that we've got, the proteins, vitamins, and all that. So, it's amazing the way Swami balances everything. Uh, all of us must be witness, Swami with Venkatachalam sir on our portico.
Yes.
Well, I might be digressing here, but Swami is so particular about what he is feeding his boys. Anyway, Jesse, it's yours now.
Absolutely. No, I'll just add one point to it, because the food, the way we cook the food and the way we serve it is pretty physical in nature. It's very obvious, we see it. One aspect which eludes our understanding is the intention. The millennials will question this. How does intention really impact the food? To all of them, I don't have any statistical or scientific evidence at this point in time, but I'll just quote a fundamental thing about quantum mechanics. One of the most famous experiments is basically the two photon interference. I will not go into the technical details of it, but basically this is the sum and bonum. The moment you design the experiment in a way that there is a mechanism of guessing the result changes. But if you design the experiment in a way that there is no evidence of guessing it, then you get a random result or you get something else. And the question is, who is guessing? Obviously, it has to be the photon. That means there is some awareness. So the end point is this: the very fact that you are conducting an experiment or you're observing it influences the results, as subtle as that.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
The very act of measurement influences the result that you are taking. So if that is possible, can we not assume that there is a very significant relationship between something which is very subtly aware to something which is extremely gross? So this is one point I just wanted to throw open so that we have the adequate component of
Beautiful.
scientific evidence for this. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Fantastic.
It really opens up a very different outlook and understanding that there are many things which many of us would never know. And It's like either you reinvent the wheel or you accept the formula and move your life forward. So all these Vedic dictums and the words of God are basically, I take it as a formula given to us. You can test them, no doubt, but you don't have to waste time in discovering it yourself in that manner. But it is
Very true.
amazing.
Very
How
true.
Absolutely,
do
brother.
you?
Just one word to
Sure.
substitute that is faith. Swami tells
Yeah.
Nammakamaya and Nayanambulu. You just have, if you have that faith, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to go behind Schrodinger's equations and quantum mechanics. Do you have faith is the question. And probably
నమ్మి
that is the
చెడిన
reason.
వారు లేరు కానీ నమ్మక చెడిన వారు ఉన్నారు. He says in
Yeah.
other way around. నమ్మక చెడిన వారు ఉండవచ్చునేమో కానీ నమ్మి చెడిన వారు లేరు
Leru.
లేరు లేరు. 3 times. In English it means there may be people who have gone astray by not having faith. There may be, how beautifully, నమ్మక చెడిన వారు ఉండవచ్చునేమో కానీ, how beautifully he phrases it. He doesn't go into absolutes. But the second half is in absolutes. నమ్మి చెడిన వారు లేరు లేరు లేరు. There is no one who has ever gone astray by having faith.
Beautifully
As
put.
Abhimanyu Bhai said,
Yeah.
we can go into experimentation and scientific thought to reiterate whatever monkey mind wants. Only recently people are talking about the power of sonics and different sound vibrations give different, and life, water has life. That great Japanese experiment wherein they took sterile water, they took natural water, they froze both, and sterile water had one of the most horrible formations of ice crystals, and natural water had one of the most beautiful geometric formations of crystallized ice and snow. Even the snowflakes, the crystals, everything has got that prana, everything has got
Excellent.
that life.
Let me
So
take the discussion slightly on another aspect of food,
right,
and which people have been asking also.
right,
Sattva, Rajas, and Tamo. This is a very typical, and loosely people think that if you are a spiritual person, then you must only have sattvic food. And then we define sattvic food in terms of eating vegetables and that. And it's a very broad classification which people have it. So I would like your thoughts on that. So why don't we start, Sudhindra and Raju? Please start. Let's share that concept of how do we look at food from this approach of trigunas.
Sudhindran brother, I'll go after you. You can start.
Okay.
Yes, brother. It is, we have heard so many. Just now we were also talking when Arvind brother mentioned as to how the Ravana, when he had taken the, the vegetable and that kind of tuber as food, he performed and penance and he won Lord Shiva. But the same Ravana, because of improper food, he went astray. So that is because the food influences the mind, and as like it was mentioned earlier, as is the food, so is the thought, and then everything depends upon that. So sattva, rajas, tamas. So anything in moderation, all the tastes in moderation, salt, spice, sweet, everything, sourness, everything in moderation is sattva, sattvic food. But when there is something in excess, excess of spice, excess of salt, excess of sourness, so then that it becomes rajasic food.
Rajasic.
And then anything which is stale and not actually fit for consumption, then it
Consumption.
becomes tamasic food. So, and these things very subtly influence our mind. We have all seen how we take something very very simple example. You have excess of chili, okay, then you because of that the actual reaction is you get agitated, you know that it's hot and then it's spicy and you get agitated even when having that food. So that, and that kind of vibration stays on, that agitation stays on in the mind because of that food. So, and so that's one thing. And I will of course come back to how Swami has given us the formula to overcome these kind of limitations that we have in food through prayer.
Sudhindran, just being a devil's advocate on your statement, some people may, be extra smart in saying, are you saying that we can have unlimited controlled quantities non-vegetarian? Will that be considered as sattvic?
No, so there are two aspects: quality and quantity. So both. So even having sattvic food, vegetables in excess is not sattvic. It becomes tamasic then.
Tamasic.
So there is a balance of quality and quantity that needs to be maintained in order to keep it as sattvic. So that, and another thing that is very, each one is required for a purpose. While probably the warriors in those days, they had rajasic food because they had to have that kind of a food in order to face wars, in order to build up that kind of a body, and that you cannot be a saint in a battlefield. So you need a
Absolutely.
warrior on the battlefield. So you need that kind of food in order to make you a fit warrior. But if you choose to become a spiritual aspirant, then you need to change your food.
So that means the
And
food quality can be also relating to the age and the occupation, if I may put it in a
Absolutely.
broader term.
Absolutely.
Yes, Raju, you were
Absolutely.
saying something.
yes, brother, in this clipping, the video clipping is quite famous. It has gone around the WhatsApp groups of all Sai devotees. Is on 65th or 78th birthday where Swami declares, Swami says, my those are not devotees who have meat and smoke and alcohol. So he openly declares. And I was kind of following Swami's discourse last night, and he beautiful it not it, it used to always strike me as to why would Swami use the word those are not devotees, bhaktul karu, bhaktul karu. So I used to get confused with that statement because I know of people who have these items and yet are considered to be very good devotees. Now, in one of the discourses that Swami gave in 1972 or 73, Swami beautifully talks about Krishna explaining the concept of bhakti, and there he clarifies. He says, now when you Mad Bhakta, okay, one of the phrases that Krishna uses in Bhagavad Gita. So, when you go for a job, when you seek a job, what are you? You are the Bhakta of the job. You are seeking job. When you seek money, what are you? You are Bhakta of the money. So, when will you be qualified as my devotee? When you seek me alone, then you qualify as my devotee. And that desire of seeking God, that is special for human being. And why
Awesome.
we should not have meat or or stale food, as brother Sudhindran put. Meat, the problem is that animal kingdom, they do not have this desire of seeking God. They have a instinct of survival, of existence. It has not transformed to an instinct of evolution. So when your body gets dominated with that sort of food, what happens is this intuition of evolution, it subsides, and it says that desire to seek that supreme state goes down with this intake, because as is the food, so is your body, and then so is your mind. Now, why do we need, should not have stale food? Swami goes on to he just draws a little more parallel. He says, for example, beautifully explains. He says, take the case of the sprouts. When you soak them, you have those sprouts coming up. They're the seed sprout. But take the same seed and then just roast it. It does not sprout. He says, boy, what is the difference? He says it is that fire which killed the life force in that in that
Seeds.
seed.
Seeds.
Now, when you take that seed, the dead seed, it has a different reaction. When you take the seed with life, that has a completely different reaction. And he says,
Wow.
what he goes on to explain, he says, what would you like to come out of your body? I mean, what would a mother like to come out of her body? Would she like to come out of her body a child, a form of a child with life, or a form of a child without life? What would you prefer? And it leaves. He takes on one more question, very subtly
Wow.
hinting what choice should we make. So
Yeah.
Amazing.
the reason why we should not have meat and stale food is this is the explanation that Swami gives in various discourses.
I'll just
Wow.
want to add to what Raju is saying, just a small, sidetrack here. There is a difference between a bhakta and a shishya. You take there are millions of bhaktas. Everyone aspires to be a bhakta, but when it came to the time of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna was searching for a shishya, an ideal patra in which everything could be poured on to that Bhagavad Gita. So it's basically Swami has told a lot, but are we willing to make the transition from merely being bhaktas, listening everything, or are we taking the next step to becoming shishyas, wherein we really become the ideal recipients of what he has decided to pour into us? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Discipline unnavade, devotee is what Swami says, connecting both these words.
Correct.
A
Absolutely.
disciple and a devotee, connecting both of them, the Shishya and the Bhakta. A Shishya has the discipline, and that discipline elevates a Shishya to become a Bhakta. Everybody can be a Bhakta. The Navavada Bhakti Marga is offered to everybody. But as you said, that as a difference between seeing and perceiving, listening and hearing. Sorry, hearing and listening. Totally.
Listening.
And
If,
that
if it
Bhagavan,
is done
yes.
with
in the similar,
consciousness, if it is done
I
with
think
consciousness or awareness,
Hmm.
if it is done with consciousness or awareness, anything done with awareness has got value. If it is done as a matter of rote, as a matter of habit, as a matter of ritual, we stop there. There is no value. That's
In
Swami
fact,
himself has said.
that mention of patra, that mention of Arjuna being the vessel, that I again kind of brings back to the discussion of our food. That
Hmm.
Swami umpteen times Swami emphasizes the purity of patra, padartha, and the third one
Paka.
probably I don't know whether
Paka,
yes,
paka.
the paka. Yeah,
Paka,
so the
Patra, and Padartha.
padartha,
The paka is cooking, patartha is the food, and patra is the
patra,
container.
the
All three
container.
have to be clean. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Continue, Raju.
Right. So just to add on, in fact, in one of the Swami gives a context. Shishupala, Krishna was supposed to be receiving that Agratambulam, right? After Rajasuya Yaga, we have heard Swami explaining this, but it was an eye opener for me where Swami explains that Agratambulam was supposed to be received by Krishna in that patra, which was meant to be given by Dharmaja.
Hmm.
That vessel in which, how do you give Agratambulam? There's a tradition, at least in southern India, where you have a silver and a golden plate, and in that you put those tamalapaku, and there are certain
Betel
elements,
leaves.
eight
Betel
or
leaves.
nine, yeah, betel leaves,
So
and
just
eight
for
or
the
nine.
benefit of everyone, Raju, Agratambulam is basically a gift for the chief guest.
Right,
Something
right,
which is,
right,
yeah.
Yeah.
right, right.
Right.
So this this vessel, which was supposed to be given to Dharmaja, which was supposed to be given by Dharmaja to Krishna,
Hmm.
Dharmaja, who gets it? I was just reading one of those IIM written books of old history of Mahabharata. Who was the one who gets that Agratambulam vessel to the court? It was Shishupala.
Wow.
Shishupala,
He brings it to the court?
through strange circumstances, it is just probably some of those
Interesting.
cultures, yeah. And
Okay.
Swami explains, he says that vessel Krishna does not accept it. As Shishupala is abusing Krishna, Krishna
Hmm.
takes it from Dharmaja and throws it back at Shishupala.
Arey, wow. Fantastic.
Very
So that
subtly,
is the plate. No, no. So that is
right?
the plate which Krishna uses as a discus, huh?
Exactly, exactly. He
Oh,
does not accept it
wow. Wow. Fantastic. Wow.
because that vessel was not pure.
My God. Hmm.
That is the importance that the Lord gives, and very subtly He teaches these things. We just need to be
Yeah.
aware of his
So
actions.
this wasn't very subtle, beheading of Shishupala was
No,
not a subtle thing.
no, I
But
meant with that
oh,
plate.
wow. Amazing, amazing. This connection, this is the first time I'm hearing it, and it's very, very revealing. Awesome.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Raju, for sharing it. Very,
Beautiful.
very nice. Very nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. So, Paka
Patra.
Shuddhi has got this much of importance. No, 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 no. Patra. This is
Patra
Patra
Shuddhi.
Shuddhi. This is
Patra
Patra
Shuddhi.
Shuddhi. About
So
Paka
Patra
Shuddhi,
Shuddhi,
I have the story about Paka Shuddhi. And now let's get into that. Very loving. I mean, now that the thread is already in my mind, I'll just give it. You can take over
sure,
after
please,
that.
please, please go ahead.
Because this was again in those Purnachandra sessions which Swami gave us. And of course, he has mentioned that in general public also. It's about the story about a very, very studious, very disciplined, very systematic brahmachari, a young boy who is studying in a gurukula under his guru, staying in the house of his guru, eating only what the Guru Mata gives after the guru has food. Very, very disciplined. And a rich outcome. The Gurukula is sustained by all the rich people. During those days, the village owned the Gurukula, and the Gurukula was, in the sense of ownership, I mean, in terms of finance. They would offer the dhanya, and everything. It would be sustained. It takes a village to teach a child. So, probably that is where the sentence came from. Sorry, let me not draw too many parallels. This young boy was the chosen one of the Guru. Very, very systematic, very scientific, very, very good. And then a rich man comes and says, Guruji, I'm having a feast being given. Would you be kind enough to come to that feast and bless all of us? And the Guru says, I will send my disciple. He will come. I will come there on my behalf. So the disciple follows the orders of the Guru and he goes. He partakes the food, which is served to him in a very nice manner. Sattvic food, no non-veg, nothing. It's a sattvic food is served to him. He partakes the food and then he comes back. Of course, he does all that. Pana, apana, udana, vyana, samana, all the standard process of pouring the water and doing the otram, he does it. Whatever prayers he has to chant, he chants. But when he comes back at night, he begins to have this nightmare. Swami was narrating it. By the way, Swami makes it very dramatic. రాత్రి ఆ చిన్నపిల్లాడు పండుకున్నప్పుడు you should see Swami's expressions whether the night when the little boy was sleeping, he begins to see visions of a very beautiful young woman, and she is weeping, very badly weeping, distraught. Her hair is in disarray. She's weeping, and then she comes and she stretches her hand towards his man, then she disappears. So this boy is totally agitated. I mean, he's a brahmachari following the row. How am I getting such horrible thoughts? I've never interacted, I've never thought of a woman in such a horrible fashion. Why are these thoughts coming into my mind? Next day morning, he goes, falls at the feet of the Guru, begs pardon. Guruji, please, I'm having these miserable thoughts. And the Guru just places, as Swami, the way the beautifully Swami does. There was a boy sitting right in front of Swami during those Purnachandra sessions, right at Swami's chair. Swami stretched his hand and put his hand on top of that boy's head and said, the Guru touched the boy like this, closed his eyes, and then he knew the reason. So I don't want to know what happened inside that boy's head when Swami touched him and Swami said this, but all of us can think of it. Swami said, that feast was being given as a Santarpana. Santarpana is usually something as Shraddh, which we call in North. So, the Pakashuddhi, the quality of thought that was going on in the minds of the people who were cooking, it generated all that negative vibration inside that food. So despite you doing the Brahmarpanam, despite you doing the Achamanam, that negative vibration went into your system, and as long as that food lies in your system, these feelings will be there.
Wow.
Wait for it to get cleaned out of your system. Drink water, wash it out, clean it up, keep contemplating on God. Just imagine,
Wow.
if by just having food which somebody else has
Actually,
cooked for some other purpose,
Arvind,
Hanji.
let me take this story. It actually
Ji.
happened in Parthi.
Wow.
Bhagawan must have narrated to all of you, but it happened in the 80s. And this guru used to have the same process of traveling with his children and going around, and they would be called for feasts. So this exactly happened, and they were sitting in the darshan, and this small child was also part of the contingent. The all the young monks kind of. So when Bhagawan came for darshan, the Guru actually got up and prayed to Swami. Swami said, Tilsara. So he just indicated, I know. And very mischievously went to the child. He was sitting next to the Guru only. And he said, what happened? So, he said, Swami, I don't know, I'm getting these dreams. I'm seeing this lady. And actually the statement was, he's seeing a lady who is dressed like a bride. She's
Oh.
a newly wedded girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she's calling out, help, help.
Wow.
And I'm seeing it every night. And it has been months gone by. So initially the Guru had thought that it must be age issue. Because the boy is growing up, it could be an age related thing. So he said, don't worry, continue your penance, do your prayers, and it will be okay. But it did not go. And it so happened by Swami then later on acknowledged, said, I will to come to Purti. So they were moving around and they came to Purti. And then Swami, when he told that boy, no, Swami, I'm still getting the dreams, Swami said, go outside, buy castor oil and drink. You know how he tells an instruction as if he's just, joking. But they took it very seriously and they said, take this bottle, buy a castor oil bottle, drink. So they stayed for a few weeks. I think they stayed for 2 weeks, something like that. So the poor child drank every day. He used to drink castor oil. So you can imagine how horrible it is to drink. It tastes horrible, but he drank. So after a few days, Swami again walked into him and he said, how are you? He said, Swami, quite okay, but sometimes I see. Swami said, continue. Continue drinking castor oil. So he continued drinking castor oil for almost 7-8 days. And then he said, now I'm relieved, Swami. No more. And Swami was very happy. Then later on, before they were leaving, Bhagawan called them for an interview. And that is the time when they were chatting with Bhagawan, and the Guru asked Swami, Swami, if you don't mind, can you bless me? Tell me, what is the connection between his dreams and castor oil? You are giving a medicine, like I would like to know so that I can also prescribe tomorrow, something like that. Probably he must have thought that. And he said, Swami, I didn't understand, like how castor oil cured him. Then Swami reminded him that 2 months back, where did you have your food? And then this story came out. And Bhagawan actually disclosed it. He said, do you know whose fast was that? And the Guru said, Swami, I believe there was a death in the family. And for that, the rich man, there is actually Sahukar of that village. He had called us for Preeti Bhoj, or whatever you call that. So Swami said, you know whose death was that? So he said, Swami, I don't know. I didn't inquire. He said, you are a Guru. You should be careful. You should find out. He said, that was the death of his wife. Actually, what had happened was he was an old man and he had been single for long. One day, his cook was doing his work at home when his daughter, the cook's daughter, visited him. So this old man got attracted towards the girl and he told the cook, marry this daughter to me and I will forgive all your loans and she will live a happy life. So the father was like, you are like father figure to her. And he was distorted, but he was so poor, he could not say no to him. And he told his daughter about it. And daughter also realizing the father's condition, she could not say no to him. And they got married. The same night of marriage, the girl commits suicide. And because of that, this feast was organized. And who was the cook of this feast? Was girl's father. Because he was the cook of the family. So imagine the girl's father is cooking the food. And while he was cooking, his only thought was that he was visualizing his daughter dressed up like a bride and crying for help. So he got emotional and he said, I could not help my daughter. And that is why that feeling entered the food. And that is the food which all had. And that is why the impact came. And all these months, it was very rich food because he's a rich man. The food served was with a lot of oil, ghee, and all that. So there was a lot of food remaining in the arteries. And those particles were giving him the bad dreams. So by drinking castor oil, I was just cleaning up his arteries.
Wow.
When he drank castor oil, it was just cleaning up the arteries. So when the last bit of that granule of food disappeared from the body, his dreams got over. So the guru was
Bhagwan
literally
simplified it so much.
so
Bhagwan
beautifully.
simplified it so much.
Yeah. And then Swami said to him very beautiful. The guru asked him another question. He said, Swami, that same food we all ate. We all ate. Other children also ate. Why only this child got impacted? Swami said, that is important to note. He is much evolved child. His consciousness has become too sensitive and receptive. So a small little deviation in everything impacts him.
Oh
That is
my
why he
God.
was most impacted by that.
What a
Whereas
lesson.
other children were not so sensitively ready, so they did not feel that much. So then
Fantastic.
he again asked third question to Bhagawan. He said, Swami, now I am stuck. What should I do? Because my dharma says that I have to travel with children. My dharma is that I have to eat. Anybody invites me to bhog, I have to go. So now how do I protect them? What do I do? Then Bhagavan said, Ante, that is why I said, before you eat anywhere, say Brahmarpanam. And that is how he reinstated the importance of to chant. Okay, that's a very powerful story to initiate the significance and importance of Brahmarpanam. So let me ask Sudhindran, could you please explain this Brahmarpanam to everybody? Because these are two different shlokas from Bhagavad Gita. How Bhagavan has chosen them to be chanted for us. So if I'll leave the floor open, but let us Sudhindran can start the. So I would like to know more about Brahmarpanam for the benefit of everybody.
Yes, brother. So, Brahmarpanam is a prayer that all of us, I know, you all of you remember how when the prasadam is being served after Akhand Bhajan and after Shivratri, the entire Saikulvanta reverberates with Brahmarpanam prayer. And the Brahman is right there in front of us receiving the prayer as well as the Naivedyam. So, Brahmarpanam Swami lays a lot of emphasis on chanting this Brahmarpanam prayer, and that's why he's made it a part of our routine in the hostel itself. So, this I would say is more of an insurance because it kind of protects us from so many uncertainties that we don't know that are beyond our knowledge. So many things have gone to the food, and this is actually our insurance cover and the protection and prayer of protection that we have. So, and let me chant this. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavihi Brahmagnau Brahmana Hutam Brahmai Vatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Brahmarpanam. So you think the offering itself is Brahman food, God. Brahma Havihi. The offering is Havihi is offering to God. Brahmagnav, the food, the Agni, which consumes it, which cooks it and consumes both, that is also God. Brahmagnav Brahmana Hutam, the offering process is God. Brahmai Vatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. So, the one who realizes that everything is divine, he reaches divinity. Brahmai Vatena Gantavyam. He reaches the destination of Godhead. One who realizes that all these actions are Brahman. So when we transmute mere food into God, always Swami says Annam Brahma. Food is God. When you don't look at it as food, but you look at it as God, then it takes the shape of God, and then it protects us. And then Swami very well says, so wonderfully says in so many discourses, when this is a prayer from the devotee of offering all the food to God, then Swami says, లోపల నుంచి జవాబు వస్తుంది. And Swami, from inside you hear the reply from God. And God says, Aham Vaishwanuro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashritah Pranapana Samayuktah Pachamyannam Chaturvidham. So God says, don't worry, I am the food, I am the fire within you, that power of digestion that digests all that food that you take. Aham Vaishwanano Bhutva Praninam Dehamashata. I am the fire, the power of digestion in all the beings, in the bodies of all the beings. Pranapana Samayukta. Along with the prana, apana, samana, with these life forces, the food is digested. Pachamyannam chaturvedam. I am the consumer of food. So when you realize the offering is God, the one who accepts is God, the giver is God, the consumer is God. When everything is divinized, then that transmutes mere food into naivedyam or prasadam, and that protects us from all these deficiencies in paka shuddhi, patra shuddhi, and padartha shuddhi. So that is the protection that we have when we recite this. And it is not just repeating only the sound, that bhavam is required. That bhavam is that feeling that it is being offered to God, and this is prasadam, naivedyam and prasadam. What you offer to God is naivedyam, what you receive from God is prasadam. Once you have that in mind, and then the whole thing is transmuted into worship. And I would like to also add that in the Sanatan Dharma, in Bharatiya culture, everything is considered to be yajna, and even partaking food is yajna. And this very same mantra, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi, it is, you don't say, it is actually, it is, the food is called Havihi. Havihi is something which is offered into the sacrificial fire. It's
Oblation.
not called Annam. It's not Brahma, it's not called Brahmarpanam Brahma Annam. It's Brahma Havihi. So therefore, it is understood, it is implied that the very act partaking of food itself is yajna, because it's an offering to God. And therefore, once you transmute that, if you have that with that kind of a feeling, then the results that you get is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
There was
everything is divinized as
there was one
as
instance,
yajna.
Sudhindran. I mean, I just want to add to that. I would like, this is just a thought which came because I was sitting there in that summer course when Swami said this. Swami was standing in the Brindavan Samako, and then the dining hall. Swami came. All of us chanted Brahmarpanam. I was fortunately second row facing Bhagawan. So you have one row facing Bhagawan, then a row of backs, and then the second row facing Bhagawan. I was 1.2. Next to me was one of our brothers. I don't want to take his name, but he's still working
1.2.
in 1.2, I would call it. I was looking at Swami, and then whole Brahmarpanam got over. We opened our eyes and looked at Swami, and you should see Swami's expression. ఒక్కడిది కూడా అందలేదురా. Not even one of your prayers has reached me. I remember that very clearly. Then again, all of the boys looked at each other. Then sweetly, Swami, second chance. Malli chappandi. Say it again. You should hear Brahmarpanam that day. I mean, I think the window panes would have vibrated with the amount of fervor and energy with which the Brahmarpanam was chanted. And then Swami smiled and said, గట్టిగా చెప్పక్కర్లేదు, హృదయంతో చెప్తే చాలు. Beautiful, so softly. Of course, Warden sir was there, other people were there who were translating the message to all of us.
Please say it in English also.
You don't have to say it loudly. You don't have to say it loudly. You have to say it with feeling. భావంతో చెప్పాలి. That's why Raju and JC and all of us had this. Even Sudhindran, by the way, Krishna was a Sudhindran in that drama. Sudhindran was Krishna in that drama where I played the role of Bhima. Swami has several times told us, Bhagavantudu bahya priyudu kadu, bhava priyudu. God is not after bahya, he's after bhava.
External, he's internal. He's
Yes.
an emotional.
I just connect that bhava aspect. It is extremely important. And some interesting fact about that is, it's slightly off track, but one of the major reasons for patients of dementia to die is basically they forget the fact after having placed a morsel in their mouth that they have food in their throat. They forget to swallow it, which leads to blocking, and they die.
Oh my God.
My.
So
Oh
just
my God.
imagine something as subtle as that. So we have more than a billion reasons to be grateful, and it's extremely important that that feeling permeates our being when we are chanting Brahmarpanam. Even in Christianity, they have this chant for grace. Just as
Hmm.
they say, "Oh, Father, thank us for we thank you for the food on the table." That feeling of gratitude, you see, it's across religions. It has not nothing to do with a particular dharma or something. It is the feeling with which we consume, and that feeling is very important. Just a beautiful example for episode for this. The primary school kids, once when Swami went to primary school for one of the sessions, and they had that beautiful session, and they all chanted Brahmarpanam aloud. And but one of the kids, he felt when the God himself, the Lord himself is sitting in front, what is the need for me to chant Brahmarpanam? Let me take my plate of food and offer to him directly. So
I
he
like
takes
that.
his plate and he walks straight to Swami and he offers. And he's the Hridayavasi, he knows what is happening. And very beautifully, Swami, there was a vada. Among all the things that were served, there was a vada. Swami takes a piece of that vada and puts in his mouth. And
Beautiful.
then Swami explains what happened during that interaction was that as Swami pinched a piece of vada, Swami actually removed the chili piece and he put it in his mouth. He said
Alright.
exactly that way when you chant Brahmarpanam, it removes the ill effects from your food. So it was a very, a material example of the spirit behind the
Oh,
chant, which Brother Sudhindran explained just now, that this is the reason why we
Yanta.
chant Brahmarpanam. Swami took off
beautiful.
that something which will really trouble him. And that he took and he put it. He was apparently in pain. He drank a little bit of water and then he explained. So I thought I'll add this little interesting
Oh,
piece.
To what
it's
extent he is
beautiful.
willing to
That is
come
so
down to
beautiful.
teach.
That is so
My
Absolutely.
God.
beautiful.
Amazing, amazing, lovely.
And he
Truly.
punched it that this is Brahmarpanam. When you chant Brahmarpanam, I take off the negativity of the food
Yeah, yeah,
and you can eat.
absolutely.
As a Balvika's children, we were taught Hari Data,
Hari
Hari
Dhata, Hari
Bhokta,
Bhokta. Yeah.
Hari Annam Prajapati, Hari Vipra,
Sure.
Sharirastu, Bhukte, Bhojate, Hari. What do you think is the transition? I'm sure there has to be some logical explanation from this simple chant to going into these two verses of chanting. Any idea what is the jump?
See, I would like to add here. See, you're looking at there's one way of looking at it is Brahmarpanam, Haridata, Hari Bhokta. Now, what is Bhokta? The one Bhukti, one who enjoys, is a Bhokta. Therefore, not just eating, but ultimately, then in your life, when you realize that Hari Data, Hari Bhokta, he is the one who is the giver, he is the one who is enjoying. Hari Bhokta, Hari Annam Prajapati. The food, Annam is Hari, God. Hari Vipra Sharirastu Bhunkte Bhojayate Arihi. So that food is consumed into the body, and the enjoyer is Bhunkte Bhoje, the one who is eating is also Hari. Not this is not just for food, but then when you think of it, anything that you do or anything that you enjoy, anything, when you offer it to God, then it becomes divinized. So that is basically the concept of yajna. Yajna is where you make offering, and when you in yajna, it is called, and when it says, maybe see, Saishwaraya Swaha Idam Namama, it says, no, the Swaha Namama. So that is the part of the yajna that that goes on. When you say, you offer it and says, this is for you, O Lord, Namama, not mine. So that kind of thing, it starts with food, but then slowly it should progress to all activities in our day-to-day life. And then, so that itself then will take us, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Yadashnas Yajjuhosi Dadata Yat Tat Kurushva Madarpanam. So anything, every activity that you do, offer it to me, and that is the key for bhakti. That would be the transitioning from bhukti to bhakti, and where you divinize everything, and then you proceed towards Godhead.
Sudhindran, you have raised a very beautiful thought about considering eating also as yajnam. Now people, internationally now people are exposed a lot to Indian system of doing things. But if you all can give a little bit more, light on the yajnam part of it, why is it important to think like that? Why should that? What is a reasoning behind the yajnam thought? The Vedic thought has come that treat this also as homam, as yajnam. What could be that philosophy?
So there are multiple ways in which one can look at this. There are several connotations and there are several layers which are associated with it. Going back to the two different kinds of mantras which respect food. During our postgraduate diploma, we were given this inputs regarding Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, and Advaita. So the beauty of putting things in context, as Sudhindran brother said, putting things in context, it's a journey. So in PG diploma, we were taught this concept. Like, there is no way in which you can directly jump into Advaita. My personal experience. I'd been sent to Hyderabad for my winter vacation. I came back after that. I got, literally a dressing down by Bhagawan. I'll go into that story in some other context, some other time. But the bottom line was, at the end of that entire 45-minute dressing down that I got from Swami, unbelievable. I'm writing it down so that people don't repeat such mistakes. I shared it several times, but the punchline of that, Swami asked, నేను ఎక్కడున్నానరా where am I? After the whole thing, the powerful dressing down, I was weeping, I was crying. Swami, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Swami so sarcastically, don't cry loudly, people outside can hear. I was enjoying my misery. I wouldn't say he was enjoying my misery, he was allowing that entire poison to flow out. Literally, you weep in the presence of the Lord. I don't know what to call it. He's sweating it out of you. At the end of the whole thing, Swami asked me, నేను ఎక్కడున్నానరా? Swami says, అనేసి స్వామి మీరు నా హృదయంలో ఉన్నారు స్వామి. దెన్ స్వామి సేస్, ఆహా హృదయంలో ఉన్నానా, అయితే హైదరాబాద్ పో.
So he
I'll
said, "Where
translate
am
that.
I?" He said, "Where
He
am
says,
I?"
where am I? And I said, Swami, you are in my heart, Swami. Then again, Swami, how if he wants to teach you, oh my God, he'll go to any extent to teach you. He won't let you go unless you learn the lesson. So very sweetly, Swami said, oh, so I'm in your heart. So go back to Hyderabad, keep me in your heart. No, Swami, I want to be with you. So, again, you go back to the beginning and you start crying. And then Swami pats my head, pulls my hair, and all that. And he says, you should see. I mean, it was like the dramatic pauses which Swami gives in his discourses. He gave the same pause in that interview room. He's holding my hair with his right hand as a fist behind me. And he looks at me and says, in eye to eye, I'm kneeling and Swami is seated on his chair. There's just 1 foot gap between. I'm to Swami's right. And Swami says, Sakaramu lenide nirakaramu ledura. Without the sakara, there is no nirakara. So without going through the process of polishing, evolving from the gross, you will never be able to reach the subtle. So every step that we take, we had discussed the way the food, Paka Shuddhi, Patra Shuddhi, Patartha Shuddhi, the power of Brahmarpanam to cleanse the food, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, the way the quantity and the quality of the food matters. What goes in for a sadhaka, what goes in fact you can map the different kinds of foods onto the different yogas in Bhagavad Gita also. Karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga, the different kinds of foods for those who are into karma yoga, men of action, bhakti yoga, those of devotion, and those of jnanis. So going back to Raju brother's wonderful poem right at the beginning, which he quoted from Bhagawan, 3 times a day, 2 times a day, 1 time a day. So all these things are all connected. That is the beauty of Bhagawan. He has given us the entire gamut, and we have to choose where we fit in. Now, I leave it open to the other brothers to add. I just wanted to
Raju,
share this
you
thought.
were
Yes.
Raju,
So,
you had
brother, I
that.
was just to add to what our brothers are saying. No, there's a context in which Swami had gone to. Uh, Let me not specify the city. So Swami had gone to that particular city, and the chief minister of the state was. It was mentioned in the discourse also. The chief minister of the state also had come there. So prior to Swami's discourse, the chief minister laments with the Lord, saying that Swami, Baba, Those were the days when we were young. Those were the days when we would approach a leader saying, "Oh master or oh leader, do this for my place, do this for my constituency." And these are the days, Baba. People come to me and ask, "Do this for my family, do this for my relative." That selfishness has grown. I do not know why this is happening. We have done numerous projects. We have done numerous schemes, but we're not able to find a solution to this. And this is the reason, prime reason, why so many agitations are there in the state, and so much chaos and confusion in my political cadre. Swami does not answer it directly. Swami talks in the discourse. Swami mentions, he says, our politicians of late have conceived beautiful and innovative methods in which you can cultivate food. You can get water. Says one of such projects that our people have conceived is recycling the water that you used for washing your stools. The gutter water recycle and is used to grow vegetables. And says that gutter water, it may be on an external level, it may be very pure, which your machines cannot catch the impurities, but it has all those subtle vibrations.
Oh
And
my
that
God.
vibrations are entering the vegetables, and which in turn is spoiling the minds of all those people who are consuming it. And hence you have this problem of unrest in their minds, where from the Vyasti, from the Samisti, their look turns towards Vyasti. They start becoming very selfish. And just to go back again, it is Swami who again mentions about the importance of food. Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows, and we know that story where he's lecturing Yudhishthira about the ways and means of administration in dharma. And Draupadi laughs and says, "What happened to all your wisdom when I was being disrobed?" And Bhishma explains, he gives a reason, saying that time, those were the times when I was having that food of Yudhishthira and the salt of salt of Duryodhana and the food of Duryodhana. And hence, my body, my blood was filled with those negative thoughts. And hence, I was not able to voice out my opinion. My judgment got clouded. Now, since the blood of that food has been drained out by the arrows of Arjuna, my thought clarity is great. And hence, I'm able to recall these things and talk about these things to Dharmaja. So the way we consume food, the elements of the food, or the person who makes the food, patra, padartha, paka, and apart from that, Swami also mentions even the environment, the way. There is this particular student of ours, for one of our brothers. He would come back from vacation, and for the first 1 or 2 days, he would be very agitated. He would have fights, he would have arguments. Swami would give him a lot of liberties. One day he had put forth Swami saying that, "Lord, I have this problem. Swami, please, I don't understand why this is happening to me." And then Swami again does not answer him directly. He talks to other brothers in the interview room, and then he says, "See, boys, when you go home, you sit in front of the TV and you start eating. And when you eat, while you eat, you watch those movies, watch those horror images, watch those images of various emotions. Now that vision also translates to your food, and hence it kind of reflects back in your thoughts." So I think that is the reason why when you do yajna, as Swami mentions, when you do yajna, there are 5 or 6 types of cleaning that is done. I mean, right from the yajna gundam that is being offered, to the wood that is being offered, and the environs in which the yajna is conducted, the person who is conducting, and also the time in which it is conducted. Everything, 5 or 6 elements of cleaning happens. When he mentions food is also yajnam, very subtly but very strongly is indicating these 5 or 6 levers should be clean when you have food. If we want, we can try it. I mean, I have tried it and I have seen the consequences. You start on every Saturday, try to have your breakfast. You try this for 4 weeks. You will see the difference in your health. You try to have your breakfast between 9 to 10:30. That is Rahu Kala on every Saturday morning. Saturday morning, 9 to 10:30. have your food. You will see the difference. You either your stools will go bad or your sleep will get disturbed. I have tried it. I have experimented it.
No arguments. I had this funny
No,
experience
no
in the year
argument.
1992.
No
In the year
argument here.
1992, really, I had
We
this
are,
experience, Raju.
we
Really, it
are,
was
we
like
are,
he
we
had
are
this.
giving a very difficult challenge to, test it out. Rahu Kalam. Oh my God.
You know,
I will just add to
depends. It
this
depends on the food.
particular thing of. Sorry, brother. You want
Yes,
to go
Jagdish,
ahead? You
go
can go
for it.
ahead,
No, no.
Arvind, brother.
I'll just finish this.
Sure.
As Raju was telling, the time when you eat your food and what you see when you eat your food. After this drama practice started for the convocation drama in the 1998, I was supposed to play the role of Ishvara, Lord Shiva. And other than Shiva, all kinds of thoughts were coming into my head. So I was sitting at Swami's lotus feet. It was inside the interview room, and I was struggling. I was not saying anything to Swami. Then Swami is sitting in the chair. He looks at me with this corner of his eye and says, Yemi Ishvara, etla undi. How are you, Ishvara? I said, Swami, unable to concentrate. The conversation was in Telugu. Swami, అస్సలు మైండ్ సెట్ అవటం మైండ్ ఇస్ నాట్ స్టెబిలైజింగ్ స్వామి. And then Swami says, ఎందుకు అనుకుంటున్నావు? Why do you think it is not stabilizing? See, during those days, I think all of us know convocation drama means we'll have the vice chancellor, the registrar, the elders, the warden, all the movers and shakers and decision makers in the interview room along with the drama boys. So at that time, if any faux pas is made or anything goes wrong, you are marked. There is one charge sheet will start and things step by step things will get marked. So we have to be really very careful. And let me not say in a negative sense, in a very positive sense. See, the beauty of Bhagwan's education system was all the elders would be there not to chastise us, but to correct us. I have never gone through any experience in my entire academic career wherein somebody took me to task for the just for the heck of it. They have put me in their place, but with the best thoughts in mind. And Swami said the same thing that day. Endu kotsunai, why do you think you're getting those thoughts? I don't know, Swami. You are saying dancing girls, right? Oh my God. Literally, Swami said, and my dance చేస్తున్న అమ్మాయిలు కనిపిస్తున్నారు కదా, you're able to see dancing girls, right? I said, so please, Swami. Exactly what was going on in my mind. And then Swami says, whenever you had dinner, you used to sit in front of the TV and watch Yemadi Chitraharu, Chitralahari during those days. When, of course, global media had not yet opened up at that time. So Swami was beautifully pinpointing, saying, what you see when you eat, all that also goes into your system. So thank you, Raju. That was a memory that you really brought up. And thank you very much. Jesse, over to you.
Sure, sure. So this aspect of yajna, I'm sure a lot of people across the globe might not be able to associate or relate to what a yajna is. To give an academic or a technical context to it, it is as good as a laboratory experiment. In a chemistry laboratory, you're trying to do an experiment. How important is it for you to have the test tube clean? How important is it for you to have all the apparatus clean, the chemicals and stuff, everything clean? It is that very important. And just imagine, it's a reaction happening in our stomach. I'm putting it in a very, in the lamest way possible in scientific terminology, but I'm just trying to draw your attention to it. What is the kind of chemical it's a chemical reaction that's happening in your stomach. What kind of chemical reaction? Any chemical reaction, for the students of science will know, is governed by temperature and pressure. It has to have that. Swami showed what he ate. He spoke about he showed us everything in his plate about what he ate. I wouldn't go into that aspect, maybe at a later point in time, but towards the end, he said that I end my meal with a sip of lukewarm water. A sip of lukewarm water. I just sip 2 or 3 of lukewarm. Why lukewarm water? Today, if you open, there's Wikipedia and pages after pages telling the importance of why we should have lukewarm water or warm water after food. It helps open up your nerves. It aids your digestion process. Now, it aids your digestion process. Why does it aid? Because the reaction happening needs a specific temperature. The warmer, the faster the reaction happens. Now, if Swami said he drink a ton of warm water, means then it's no longer a reaction. You're dousing the whole process. He said the sip or two. That is the way you consume food. Means, literally, when Swami made a statement or something which he actually lived, he just didn't speak. for us, all it needed to lead an ideal life was to observe what Swami is doing, pen it down, and just follow it to the T. That's all. And that would be an ideal life. And how simple
Actually,
things.
actually, you have really raised beautifully, because if you watch Bhagwan eat,
Yeah,
let's take example of eating, you can learn so much. He eats very little,
very
but
little.
he does the formality of eating fully,
Exactly.
like washing the hand as if he has eaten too much, then gargling, and then it's like, if you watch him, it looks like as if he must have eaten so much that he needs to do all of that, whereas we all have seen him how sparingly he eats actually.
Absolutely.
I wanted to one more before we bring this whole conclusion today for today's session. you know uh, Maybe Raju, do you recall if Bhagwan has also taught us about, like Arvind just pointed it out, how to eat? Like
Exactly.
don't watch anything else while you're eating. Don't talk while eating. So can you just give us a kind of a checklist so people can get into that mold of?
Swami also, as mentioned in that earlier experience of our brothers, Swami mentioned that you should not be watching uh, things of disturbance or images of sensual arousement when you eat. One. Second, he says you should not hear or listen to disturbing sounds also when you eat. Third, and very importantly, you have these Twitter videos, Facebook videos where while eating, people, I'm sure you get those. I've seen it this afternoon. A major military major of US, he was eating with his wife in a restaurant, and suddenly starts choking. The food gets caught in that windpipe, and they do that particular kind of exercise where you punch his back and then they spit it out.
Heimlich maneuver.
Yes,
Heimlich
yes.
maneuver.
I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah, they just
yes.
hold you and press you hard, huh?
Yeah, press you from the back. And the prime reason why it occurs because you talk. When you talk, when you eat, that blockage of the windpipe occurs. And Swami in discourse emphasizes. He says this line two times. He says, "Do not talk while eating," and he says, "Those who maintain silence while eating tend to live longer." My grandmother is 89. She can climb our duplex house. It's around 42 steps up and down without support. She does not talk while she eats. There's the only difference between she and her sister. Her sister is also of similar age, 87, but she is bedridden. She is going through quite a tough challenge. And another important aspect that Swami mentions is, this he had told one of our teachers. He had told me this. He said, when you eat, the angle, the way you sit. So for example, the way you sit is very important. When you sit on table, you don't know whether your stomach is full or not. So that is why you are supposed, it is better for you to, you squat in that sukhasana. And and the way in which your hand raises up and down, you should not, this part should not be bending too much. Instead, your hand should be coming up and down. So he did not, this particular teacher of ours did not know as to why that is necessary. But if you watch some of the lectures of Jamna Das Pradeep and other dietitians, they explain how important it is to have a straight and erect spine while eating. It has deep implications on the way the food gets digested, the way the food gets processed by liver. And another important point that Swami also mentions is, once you finish your food, uh, do not, okay, before that, do not leave anything. Whatever you take in your plate, finish it. One of the boys in Kodai, he was serving Swami, and he had done Brahmarpanam. He had literally nine those grains of rice, that nine rice grains in his plate. So this boy was just take his plate and going to the basin to leave it there. And Swami comes in the middle, and Swami says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Swami, I have finished my food." He is very proud because it's just clean, but those are just nine. grains of rice there. And Swami looks at him and says, have you chanted Brahmarpanam? He says, yes, Swami. Then the Swami points out to that one grain, says, one Brahma, two Brahma, three Brahma. Says, you are wasting nine Brahmas. And in one of I was working with a very powerful industrialist, a great devotee. He had told me this incident. He had asked Swami once, Swami, I have so much of money, so much of sampatti, so much of wealth. But while I travel around country, I see so many people struggling for food. Swami did not answer him directly, but Swami told him a story. He said, when we had gone to Bombay, Karunyananda was also with me. We were staying in the Dharmakshetra, and Karunyananda was looking out of the window. We just finished our lunch, sumptuous lunch, and Karunyananda was looking out, and outside that wall, there were people who were struggling. People were struggling to eat from the dustbins, and he was feeling that guilt that Swami, just minutes ago, we had food with the Lord.
Man snatching the food from the dog.
From the
That
dog,
is what
yes.
he saw.
Yes, I
From
don't
the
want
garbage,
to.
from
Right,
the garbage bin. Yes.
Yes. So he has this thought, and then Swami appears behind him, and then Swami tells him, yes, that particular person, you do not know the past of the particular person. He said that particular person had wasted so much food. Now he has to undergo this pain in this life. Now Swami explains to this devotee, saying that, and hence you have, since you have respected, your elders have respected food, you are being bestowed that blessing of having food on a continuous basis. If you waste food, it comes back to you in a very different manner. And the last and final principle, which Swami many times emphasizes, is when you have food, before, or even one of the discourse Swami mentions, before having or after having food, express your gratitude. One is before having food, that Brahmarpanam Brahmahavihi, where you're subtly emphasizing that you are the Brahman, that journey from Advaita to Dvaita to Advaita. But after having food, be thankful to the Lord, be thankful to that entity who served you food, be thankful to that environs which provided you food. Express your gratitude and end your food. So you have, I'm sure most of us have observed in a hostel that some of the boys, after finishing their food, they just pray and they get up. Because Swami had instructed them on particular instances. I've heard this from 2-3 brothers, in fact, in one of the discourse also. The gratitude of having food is also very important characteristic.
I recollect this in a
So
hostel
beautiful.
discourse, high secondary school. Swami said, Annadata Sukhi Bhava. You start with
Yes.
Brahmarpanam
Yes.
and you end with
And
that line.
Annadatas, yes.
So
Saira.
sweet. So beautiful. Gratitude. Brother, I think we have got much more to share and discuss about this food aspect. And, because we have to look at it, what Bhagawan has also described, what is healthy eating and what are the protocols of eating, and then what creates disturbance in our Anamaya Kosha, so to say, and leading to Pranamaya and other things. So I think we will continue our discussions coming weeks again. So thank you all very much for your participation and contributions. And I request all the viewers who are watching us, and if you have any relevant question in this area, you're most welcome to write it on the comment section or send it to us, and we will try to address as best as we can. And thank you very much. Any final words from any one of you before we close for the day?
Brother, I think they should translate what Annadata Sukhi Bhava means so that
Sure.
everyone can understand the meaning. Brother?
Ranga, you only say
Annadata.
that?
Ranganath, మీరు
Sorry.
చెప్పండి. Ranganath,
No,
మీరు చెప్పండి. You go ahead.
So Annadata, Anna, we know the meaning. Data, the one who gives us, Sukhi Bhava, let him be peaceful, let him be calm. So Sukhi
Happy.
Bhava has different layers of meaning, but one of the important ones is let him be happy, let him be calm in his mind, let him be prosperous in his, this reminds me of one nice incident. One of the
Sure, go
brothers
ahead.
one of the brothers had just gone to his home, and he was doing Narayan Seva, and one Narayana He comes to him. So he served that Narayana. As he was serving that Narayana, he saw that his sleeves were of orange color. So he remembered Swami. And with the thought of Swami, he serves him. It's a very brief encounter. He comes back after vacation. Swami comes to him. Boys were serving, Swami was distributing laddus that day. So one of the laddus Swami picks up from that basin, comes to him, and then places it in his hand and says, "That day you gave me food, now I'm giving back that food to you." He doesn't even realize what it, but it takes some time, and then he realizes that whomever you serve, whoever you receives the food, whoever is serving the food, is that Lord Himself. With this thought, Sai Ram.
So beautiful. Swami has touched us in million ways, and every time, every thought of his is so blissful. Thank you, brothers, for your time and for sharing. We will look forward for another session and coming week by Bhagwan's grace. Thank you very much, and Sairam to everybody. We will have this
Sairam.
video on the
Thank
channel,
you.
so welcome.
Sai Ram.
Sairam, everybody.
Sairam. Thank you.
Sai Ram.